Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the United States Senator.
Thank you very much for coming out this evening to discuss some very important issues. And what we're going to do is I'm going to chat for a little bit. We have some local folks, a panel, who are going to come up and give us their perspective, and then we want to have a serious discussion with you. What I want to do is just very briefly tell you a little bit about myself. I want to give you an assessment of where I think we are as a nation. And then I want to talk about what's going on politically in this country and suggest to you where we might want to go. And we'll have the panelists, and then I want you to tell me what you think. I am the longest serving independent in the history of the United States of America in terms of being in Congress. And whenever people ask me, well, why are you an independent? Is that because you want to be somewhere between the Democrats and the Republicans? That is not the answer. I was first elected, I started my political career defeating a long-term Democratic incumbent mayor in Burlington, Vermont. Burlington is the largest city in the state of Vermont. And I defeated him by 10 votes after a recount. And one of the proudest accomplishments that I've ever had in my life is that 2 years, we have elections in Burlington every 2 years. 2 years later, we doubled the voter turnout. Wow. And the lesson that I learned then, that I've never forgotten, is if you respond to the needs of people, especially working people and lower income people, they will get involved in the political process. One of the reasons we are where we are as a nation right now is that people have lost faith in government, they've lost faith in politics, they've lost faith in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And if you ask me why I'm an independent, the answer is, I'm going to get into this somewhat, I caucus with the Democrats and work very closely with progressive Democrats, but by and large, I think it would be hard to say that most Americans believe that the Democratic Party is the party of working Americans. Both political parties, both political parties are heavily influenced by big money, and I think that people are in trouble and they don't see anybody speaking up for them, and the answer is they don't vote or they vote on some tangential issues. All right, let me just talk a little bit about what's going on in the country, and I'll tell you things that I suspect nobody else in the United States Senate will tell you. And in one sentence, what is going on is that despite a huge increase in recent years in productivity, in technology, which should make our nation a wealthier nation, despite that, what is going on is that the middle class is disappearing. Today we have 46.5 million Americans living in poverty, which is the highest number in the history of the United States. We have tens of millions of people working longer hours for lower wages. There was a study that just came out recently from the Census Bureau, which told us that median family income, that family right in the middle of American society, has less income today than they did 24 years ago. So people are working incredibly hard. In my state of Vermont, people are working about 1 job, 2 jobs, 3 jobs. I suspect the story is the same here, and yet they're finding themselves worse off than they were before. I want to bore you for a moment. Can I bore you with some statistics? All right. The typical middle-class family has seen its income go down by more than $5,000 since 1999. So you want to know why people are angry? You want to know why people are furious? Because they're working harder and they're making less and they're worrying about their kids. Now listen to this one. Average men, workers, made $283 less last year than they did 44 years ago. So when you talk about the economic problems, the working class, people who have not gone to college are getting decimated, absolutely decimated. Average female workers earned $1,700 less last year than they did in 2007. In the United States, and again, we don't talk about this, we have by far the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major nation on earth. 22% of our kids are living in poverty. When we talk about the economy, and you talk about unemployment, I know when you look in the newspapers, you think that unemployment is 7.4%. I don't know what it is in Alabama. But unemployment nationally is not 7.4% because those statistics do not include people who have given up looking for work and people who are working part-time when they want to work full-time. You throw those numbers in, and you know what real unemployment in this country is? It's close to 14%, almost double. Youth unemployment, kids leaving high school trying to get a job, unemployment phenomenally high. We're talking about 20%. African American youth unemployment off the charts, over 40%. So that is what's going on for working families in this country. But there is another phenomenon that is also going on, and that is that while poverty is going up and the middle class is disappearing, the people on top have never had it so good. Just again, a couple of statistics to bore you with. Statistics, by the way, that we don't talk about terribly much in this country. You all know what I mean when I talk about distribution of wealth. Right? It's not a hard concept. Who gets what? Wealth. Wealth is what we have accumulated in our lifetime, not what we made last year. In terms of wealth, the top 1% in this country owns 38% of the wealth of America. Question for you. What does the bottom 60% own? Who said that?
I saw you on Al Jazeera.
Oh, you're cheating there. 2.3%. Got that? In terms of wealth, after a lifetime, what wealth is what you have today, and some of you have been working for 30 years. Bottom 60% owns 2.3% of the wealth of America. The top 1% owns 38%. One family, the Walton family. I gather you have some Walmarts around here. One family owns more wealth than the bottom 40% of American society. There are six, Walton had 6 kids, and those 6 kids are worth something like $100 billion altogether. Our good friends, the Koch brothers, who are busy trying to make sure that Americans don't have health insurance, so we don't expand health insurance to the uninsured, are worth $71 billion. That's wealth. In terms of income, which is what you made last year, this is an equally unbelievable statistic. And that is that in the last 3 years, 95% of all new income generated in America went to the top 1%. 95% of all new income went to the top 1%. It is obscene. And the gap, therefore, between the very, very rich and everybody else is growing wider. Now, let me talk a little bit about that is kind of a broad overview of what's going on economically in America. Unemployment incredibly high, real wages going down for many American workers. I remember, you all remember, 20, 30 years ago, in terms of blue-collar jobs, if you worked in Detroit, you worked in the automobile manufacturing area, you were making $25, $28 an hour. That was the gold standard for manufacturing in America. Workers were making good wages. Now, we talked recently, you've seen on TV how manufacturing is resurfacing, we're creating new manufacturing jobs, that's a good thing. But many of you don't know that many of those new manufacturing jobs are paying 50% less than the old manufacturing jobs. And that has a lot to do with unfettered free trade. Because what corporate America and the big money interests have always wanted is to make the American worker competitive with the Chinese worker, the Mexican worker. So in the last 10 years, we have seen the loss in this country of over 50,000 manufacturing facilities, factories. 50,000. Not all of that is attributable to unfettered free trade, but a lot of it is. And that is millions of decent paying jobs. So without a manufacturing base and without a trade union movement where people could work, wasn't a glamorous job, wasn't a sexy job, but you could make a strong middle class income. You had health care, you had a pension program. When all of that's gone, where does a high school kid go out and get a job? We just out of Philadelphia, Mississippi earlier today. And you know where the kids are working? That's right. They're working in the fast food places for $7.25 an hour. Right? So that's what's going on, in my view, economically in the country.